At the time, the President of the United States was William Jefferson Clinton, or Bill Clinton. He was a center Democrat, meaning a liberal with conservative views. President Clinton is from Hope, Arkansas. He served 2 terms, from 1992 to 1996 and 1996 to 2000. Most people remember Bill Clinton for his domestic policies, a good economy, and sadly, the sex scandal that led to his impeachment. From 1995 to 1999, the Republicans had control of both the Senate and the House of Representatives, a rare event. The new Republican House Speaker, Newt Gingrich, while trying to cut government spending, could not find a budget agreement with President Clinton. The President, a Democrat, and Congress leaders, both houses Republican, were obviously at opposite ends, and this led to a pretty long government shutdown. President Clinton's foreign policies were not as impacting as he would have wished. From 1994 to 1995, unfortunately, the saddest incident of the world at the time was the Rwandan genocide. 800,000 people died in less than a month from April 1994 to July 1994. The United States and sadly the world did not do much to prevent this. In 1995, President Clinton suffered great criticism for that, and it may be the international community's biggest failure in modern history. From 1996 to 1997, President Clinton was successful when dealing with the messy breakup of the Soviet Union. Clinton helped Russia with $2.5 billion in aid. This gesture helped maintain good relations when President Clinton approved Poland, Hungary, and Czech Republic, who were at war with Russia, to join NATO. Clinton's administration also proved quite patient and successful in nuclear non-proliferation in that region. In other words, getting rid of all nuclear weapons and technology in that area. Between 1995 and 1996, President Clinton motivated NATO to send troops to Yugoslavia, where there was a massive ethnic cleansing of Bosnian Muslims by the Serbians. Clinton worked with NATO and initiated bombings against the Serbians. 20,000 American soldiers were sent to that region to ensure peace, and happily there were no American casualties. In April 1998, Catholic and Protestant leaders in Northern Ireland signed the Good Friday Peace Accords. President Clinton had worked very hard and had an important role to settle the conflict and find this agreement. Clinton's domestic policies had more of an impact on his popularity. In 1995, strict security measures were taken after the Oklahoma City bombing. 160 people were killed and 800 wounded. It was the worst domestic terrorist act ever during that time. After the tragic event, President Clinton spoke to the victims and to the country. He comforted the nation and urged them to try and pass this attack physically, emotionally, and spiritually. He tried to reinstate some trust in the system. Universal health care was a big initiative in the Clinton administration since 1992. The idea that all Americans have access to proper health care packages. It was headed by Hillary Clinton. They faced the huge oppositions, and unfortunately, it was complicated and difficult to explain to the public. In the end, it was not accepted by Congress and never prevailed. At least, in 1996, President Clinton signed a health care reform bill that expanded coverage for many Americans. This allowed workers who lost their job or changed their jobs to keep their health insurance. In August 1996, Clinton kept his promise to reform welfare. The legislation passed for this was the Personal Responsibility and Work Opportunity Reconciliation Act. The welfare rules were adjusted. People who received welfare had to work within 2 years of getting the benefits, and someone could not spend more than 5 years on welfare. Unwed teenage mothers were to live with their parents, and he eliminated Medicaid coverage of legal immigrants during their first 5 years in the country, except for emergency care. It was viewed as successful. 10 years later, welfare rolls dropped from 12.2 million to 4.5 million. Two major pieces of legislation passed under Clinton's presidency were Safe, Legal, and Rare in 1996. President Clinton vetoed a bill that would have made late abortions illegal. Clinton was a strong advocate of the right to choose, often said that he wished abortions in the United States became safe, legal, and rare. In August 1996, the Food Quality Protection Act was passed by Congress and then signed into law by President Clinton. This bill required the EPA, Environmental Protection Agency, to regulate pesticides and make sure that food, mostly the ones consumed by babies, were safe. It helped revise and regulate very dangerous pesticide applications in food production. In 1996, there was an important Supreme Court case, United States versus Virginia Military Institute. VMI was a prestigious male-only military university for higher learning. In 1996, VMI was sued by the United States because it only accepted male applicants. This violated the 14th Amendment's Equal Protection Clause. After several trials between district court and appeals court, the United States, still unsatisfied with the results, took the case to the Supreme Court, which vetoed 7-1 against VMI and ended up forcing the VMI program to accept both men and women. Unfortunately for President Clinton, scandals interfered with the president's focus of running the country. In May 1997, the Supreme Court ruled that Paula Jones was allowed to sue President Clinton for sexual harassment. In 1998, news broke that President Clinton may have had inappropriate relations with a White House intern named Monica Lewinsky. Clinton denied the allegations and said,
I want you to listen to me. I'm going to say this again. I did not have sexual relations with that woman, Miss Lewinsky.
This scandal was widespread and caught the nation's attention for so long. It ended up with the impeachment of President Clinton by the House of Representatives on December 19, 1998. The charges were obstruction of justice and perjury, but the Senate did not come to the necessary two-thirds majority agreement to fully process it, so he was acquitted. He was the second president to get impeached. In the end, the scandal got messy and the prosecution went too far, with graphic and private information released. The public started sympathizing with the president. In the end, the public stood by him in majority and felt it was more of a private matter. In 1998, even after all this, his approval rating was 63% according to a Washington Post poll.
Society/culture. Many of the social and cultural issues being debated by the public during this time were gender and religious issues. On November 28, 1995, a new amendment was created by Ernest Istook. It overruled the traditional separation of church and state and allowed school prayer in public schools. Schools were allowed to teach about religion and its role in society. They were allowed to teach the Bible as literature, but they couldn't give religious instruction. Females take up 51% of the population and are represented in less than that percentage in children's literature. Studies have confirmed that gender stereotyping in children's books has affected their views on women's roles. Although female representation has greatly improved since the 70s, gender stereotypes are still common in children's literature. A major artistic movement during this era was literature. David Foster Wallace wrote a very popular book called Infinity Jest in 1996. Don DeLillo wrote Underworld in 1997. Another artistic movement during this time were the new movies and shows coming out. Two popular movies during this time were Stuart Little and Jumanji. On December 5, 1999, the movie Stuart Little was released, directed by Ron Minkoff. When the Littles go to an orphanage to adopt a new family member, a charming young mouse named Stuart is chosen. At first, he didn't really fit into the family, but throughout the movie, he shows his family the great things someone like him can actually do. Jumanji was released on December 15, 1995, and was directed by Joe Johnston. Alan Parrish was played by Robin Williams, Peter Shepard was played by Bradley Pierce, and Judy Shepard was played by Kristen Dunst. It was based on a magical board game that the Shepard siblings played, which unleashed them into different adventures throughout the movie. A popular TV show during this time was South Park. Stan, Kyle, Kenny, and Cartman were the main characters in the fictional show. They go around doing funny, immature things in their crazy experiences in a quiet mountain town. It was made in 1997 and still goes on to this day. Another popular TV show was Ally McBeal. Callista Flockhart played herself in the show. The show was anchored by Robert Downey Jr. as Ally's boyfriend, to the breakout character of Ling Wu, a star-making vehicle for Lucy Liu. At the time, Ling Wu was by far the most prominent and well-known character for an actress of Asian descent in TV history. So the calculating, man-eating character inspired quite a lot of analysts. The show started in 1997 and ended in 2002. Music was a big thing during this time period. Pop and hip-hop were two popular music genres. Jay-Z was a famous American rapper that came out with one of the biggest hits, Hustle, in 1996. The NSYNC was a boy band formed in Orlando in 1995. They are a group of 5 guys: Justin Timberlake, Joey Fatone, J.C. Chasez, Lance Bass, and Christian Kirkpatrick. One of their biggest hits was I Want You Back, that came out in 1997. There were also plenty of historic sporting events that happened in this era. In the 1996 Atlanta Olympics, there was a bombing. A bomb hit a crowded pavilion, leaving 2 people dead and 200 injured. Police later arrested Eric Rudolph for the criminal act in late May of 2003. Women's softball was introduced as an Olympic event in the 1996 Summer Olympics. America would go on to beat China and take home gold. In the 1999 World Cup for women's soccer, the United States team would go on to also beat China in the finals and win. Brandy Chastain made the final shot for the Americans. She took off her shirt and started running around in a sports bra. It was one for the books.
The economy was so much better under Clinton's presidency, and so he remained very popular throughout most of his years. "It's the economy, stupid," was his campaign slogan. Many insist that President Clinton piggybacked on the many innovative changes that took place during that period of time. Oil production had increased and competition drove down the price of energy. Microchips were invented, and the results of new products such as personal computers, DVD players, and graphic video games were available. Productivity in the workplace was transformed by computers that were able to connect to one another in those baby years of the internet. However, the fact remains that the U.S. went from $290 billion in budget deficit, the largest in American history, in 1992, to a budget surplus of $127 billion when he left office in 2001. 22.5 million new jobs were created, unemployment went from 7.5 to 4.9% during his term, the lowest in 30 years, and poverty rate dropped to 11.8% in 1999, the lowest since 1979. GDP growth rate was constantly rising in the late 90s, starting off with a national percentage in 1995 at 2.7% and rising to 4.7% by the end of 1999. The unemployment in 1995 began at 5.6% and by the end of the decade in 1999 dropped to 4.2%. Throughout the second half of the 90s, there was only growth in the Dow Jones national average, but the ending price gain in 1995 being $1,282.68, and at the end gain in 1999 being $2,315.69. There was only profit during this time period. During the years 1995 to 1999, there was dips in inflation, with it starting off in 1995 at 2.8% and ending at 2.2% in 1999. Gas prices began fairly moderate and consistently through the 5 years. Beginning in 1995, the gas average national gas price was $1.15, rising to $1.23 in 1996 and staying constant until 1997, dropping to $1.06 in 1998 and finally rising to $1.17 in 1999.